So let me start by thanking those of you who have reached out just to see how things are going here in Pennsylvania as a result of Canadian wildfires, which evidently have produced quite a bit of smoke. And that smoke has not only crossed into the New England portion of the United States, but also sort of the Mid-Atlantic region, which includes Pennsylvania. It's not just Pennsylvania. I mean, it's a pretty sizable portion of the sort of like Northeast region, which has been experiencing a really dystopian looking landscape. Everything seems to have this amber hue to it. It's hard to describe unless you see it with your own eyes. It's definitely concerning from the perspective that my thoughts immediately go to the Stronghold Digital Mining team, right? That are kind of like in field, kind of running around doing things outdoors. Health is important. To the extent a person feels comfortable wearing like an N95 mask, it may not be such a bad idea to do so based on some of the anecdotal research I've been reading. This is something that hopefully in due course will pass, but it is certainly it really casts a bit of a shadow, like a literal shadow over the landscape, which I think to some degree is appropriate given the shadow which has been cast upon the so-called crypto universe, right, by some of the actions of the SEC. I'll be the first to continue to point out that, cracking down on, what's described as crypto. Look, I don't have a proverbial axe to grind with individuals who are into crypto in a sense of, hey, I've got a collection of different tokens, or different, I'm involved with different projects that are interesting. I think that's great, really. As to, how the U.S. Securities and Exchange Commission is going to, sort of like figure out how they want to regulate some of that stuff. I mean, they seem to be suggesting, look, these are securities. Therefore, these exchanges, let's say the Binances of the world, the Coinbases of the world, from what I've sort of like superficially read, it would seem as if though the real issue there is, do these entities need to come into greater compliance to do what they're doing? From our perspective as people who are, right, co-owners of Stronghold Digital Mining, shareholders of the company, we are validating transactions on the Bitcoin network. Bitcoin, generally speaking, has been deemed to be a digital property. Doesn't mean that may not necessarily change in the future, but if I'm not mistaken, the very chair of the Securities and Exchange Commission has actually come out and stated as much, unless that changed very recently. Bitcoin is simply seen as digital property, similar to like farmland or a bag of potatoes, right? Anything that you could think of as just kind of like property, not really like a security at all. So to that end, and by the way, the technical issues are slowly but surely being resolved. It's still a bit of a work in progress, so thank you for your patience. But just a quick look right now at the dashboard. I'm looking at Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour of $88.75. That's phenomenal. Even though the price of Bitcoin's at 26,500, give or take a couple dollars. So see, the real magic there is the network hash rate. When the network hash rate drops, I mean, our Bitcoin priced in dollars per megawatt hour oftentimes goes way up, and that's a good thing. I also want to point out that I don't know if this is going to be visible or not. Let's see if that comes into focus there. Maybe I got to move it right there. Okay, so for Panther Creek, you'll notice that the weather image is now what appears to be smoke from a fire. So as I alluded to earlier, that is definitely something that we're experiencing, certainly here in eastern Pennsylvania. Now I do see, I'm going to try to pull this up next, So that's for scrubgrass. You'll notice that it appears to be sunny skies. So hey, to the extent y'all out in Pittsburgh have sunny, clear blue skies, that's awesome. From some of the maps and charts I've looked at, that may not necessarily be the case, but hey, the dashboard isn't perfect. It attempts to acquire data as best it can. So with that said, I also want to then mention something else that I think is kind of interesting, and I do want to follow up with regard to this. This is in response to some of the comments on Twitter. Again, I've said this before, we do have a very active and vocal community of Stronghold Digital Mining shareholders, right, and enthusiasts on Twitter, and we do tend to talk a lot about technical things. And there were a couple of comments about this idea of like, hey, as I mentioned in the O&M broadcast a couple of days ago, several days ago, there are going to be instances where it would appear as if though it's theoretically possible for us to produce electricity at both power plants, sell that electricity to the grid, generate useful revenue from that perspective, then turn around and potentially simultaneously import electricity from the grid and then use that electricity to mine Bitcoin. So it's almost like we're like double dipping. Don't know if that's, I mean, there's no reason to think that it's not actually feasible, but it's something that's hypothesized in the logic engine of the dashboard. And so I'm, that's going to be another area of increased curiosity on my part, simply because, hey, look, we know, right, that we're really kind of on the hunt for useful revenue. Well, if that's something that we could do, there are going to be instances where the grid prices are just high enough that we can sell electricity that we produce ourselves to the grid, but Bitcoin price in dollars per megawatt hour will be higher than grid prices, therefore creating a fresh margin opportunity for us there. So I'll link once again to that special broadcast in the description if you didn't check it out. The audio is a little bit goofy. Apologies for that. You might have to pump up the volume, as they'd say, to hear it a little bit better. Those broadcasts will get better in time as well. Quick check of the grid right now, $33 over in PJM Penelec, which is where Scrubgrass is located, and about $26 here on the eastern side of the state of Pennsylvania, PJM PP&L, where Panther Creek is located. All right, look, let's all stay safe, okay? You may be in an area, right, that's dealing with a lot of this smoke. This is probably nothing new to our friends, right, on the west coast of the United States, California. I mean, there's been a lot of fire issues kind of like out that way over the years. I know this is, I think, the first time many of us here on the East Coast are dealing with this, and it's a new experience, and we just got to take it a day at a time, and hopefully things will slowly but surely get themselves resolved. I'd be remiss if I didn't point out that the stock market, in terms of, I did notice earlier this morning, and it was quite jarring. It seemed as if though a lot of our peers in the Bitcoin publicly traded Bitcoin mining ecosystem, boy, the stocks were kind of like, up. Then, everything just kind of took a pretty sharp nosedive. We've kind of been topsy-turvy as well, so we're kind of getting sloshed around as well. Look, I think anytime that we see, this, the crypto being talked about, I think we sort of get lumped in with that. And there is going to be, I think Michael Saylor might have even said that there is going to be a point where we need to have a amicable but necessary divorce, right? Those of us who are sort of in Bitcoin, we might have to have an amicable divorce with, our friends in crypto, right? That's like a different sort of thing. And look at operationally, as I just said, hey, Bitcoin price in dollars per megawatt hour, $88. Again, I don't have the averages just because, again, I'm working through some technical issues. But I'll tell you something, all in all, that represents a really good margin. So operationally, we seem to be doing fine. Let's just all stay safe out there, especially Team Stronghold at both power plants. I'm the last person in the world to be, lecturing about safety, right, so to speak. But I do think about that a lot. And I just hope that we, collectively, we put safety first. because it's really important that we stay healthy so that we can then, keep the company healthy as well. It's a symbiotic, I think, relationship, as I'd say, if I'm using that word correctly. Okay, let's stay positive, let's be great, and we'll see each other again tomorrow.